out of the ordinary insights. Brought to you by Investec Specialist Bank.
William, let's go back to your story and the international studies in the Netherlands and what that has done for you.
Well, it has done very little in terms of...
Oh, well, then let's swiftly move on from that discussion.
Well, I regarded it as more of exploration of the world than really going to get something which I'm going to use here to benefit me. But it did work in that area.
Do you love what you do?
I do.
Are you happy you took the route from being an educator into a lawyer?
Yeah, I think the two are intertwined in the sense that as an educator, I realized that you interact, although you're interacting with the learners. And as a lawyer, you interact with your clients, which are basically the people who bring you bread and butter. But essentially, when you go to court and you engage the judge, you can see that the crux of everything is the skill of communication, the ability to make the judge understand. It resonates with what I used to do when I was a teacher, that I was making sure that what I say is understood by the learners. And now I'm actually trying to make sure that I educate the judge to understand my case and rule in my favor.
Wim, in terms of where you've come, you're at the top of your profession now. What's the biggest mistake that you ever made?
I regret that I never studied overseas. I was in a hurry. I went to the army, and
but William said it did nothing for him.
Spent 6 years. No, I think I should have spent a year or 2 or 3 getting a bit of exposure to the outside world, and I regret rushing into practice immediately after university.
Have you thought about where you would have gone?
Not much, because I don't think it matters much exactly where one goes. What I have in mind is just a bit of international exposure, and I suppose one could get that in very many places. Today they say the East is the place to go. A year or 2 in China would have been a fantastic experience.
Mandarin is on the cards potentially?
Yeah. Well,
Emma, it looks as though you're up for that challenge.
Well, I'm not sure about Mandarin. I think it's the most difficult language in the world, but I love studying overseas. I too got a scholarship, and I went to the London School of Economics, and I did a master's in information technology and media law. And the great benefit for me is that I now have a friend in just about every single jurisdiction in the world. And particularly in my field of law, given that it's trans-jurisdictional, what goes online can be accessed everywhere around the world. Often my practice transcends borders, so it's very handy for me just to pick up the phone to whoever was with me when I studied in London and say, who's the best media lawyer in your jurisdiction? And so what it's given me, apart from sort of the biggest free B&B network in the world, and a lot of expensive weddings to attend, it's really just given me that platform, which I think is incomparable.
Emma refers to the changing landscape from a content perspective, the advent of technology, social media. How is that changing the landscape for you, Wim?
You mean the electronic revolution?
Absolutely.
Oh, it's made... 2 things happened actually in the last 15 years. The one is that the electronic revolution, which makes the rest of the world and their resources accessible to us. But the other one was also the introduction of our constitutional democracy, because our constitutional law is not South African homemade. We share the same principles with very many jurisdictions all over the world. So it's become necessary and interesting for us to access those jurisdictions. Up to that point in time, South African law was really insular, and it didn't matter what happened in the rest of the world, and we didn't know. So yes, the two running together, the introduction of a body of law which is shared internationally, together with the medium to access it, has made a big difference.
I want to stay with this theme for a little while. William, coming back to you, how do you feel the landscape on the legal front is changing?
From all fronts.
It's changing from all fronts. What are the biggest changes that you're having to deal with on a daily basis?
Well, I think that the major change happened in 1994 when we introduced an interim constitution, because then it marked a complete departure from how law was understood and practiced in South Africa, and ushered into a new terrain of constitutionalism, democracy, the rights of people to dignity, life, and all those other rights which we cherish. And also then the 1996 Constitution, which then today is still our Constitution. So that was a major breakthrough in the practice of law. And every lawyer in South Africa was really a learner in that area because nobody has practiced it before. And since that time, we've been able to produce some of our colleagues in the legal fraternity who are actually then experts in constitutionalism. I mean, like Wim is practicing a lot in that area. And the judgments that we've produced through our constitutional court are really landmark judgments which shape the way we do things in society, the way we have to understand things, and the way we have to relate to one another. And that is the major change that has happened in the legal fraternity. But then also then there are other areas which ought to have changed dramatically, which in my view did not happen. You'll understand that in 1994, when we ushered into a new democracy, the majority of practitioners, whether you talk of attorneys or advocates, were white males in particular, and we had very few blacks then practicing as advocates or as attorneys. What I would have hoped for is that 20 years down the line, we ought to have reached a stage where we're able to say that you are able to see parity, to say that we have indeed made strides in producing a significant number of black advocates who can practice law and who can actually earn. We have not. No, we have not. We have not. You see, I've said to you that I'm the current chairman of the Johannesburg Bar, and I'm able to give you the statistics of our members as it stands now. We have about 950 members who are practicing advocates, but of that number, then not even a quarter then are black practitioners. But those who are black practitioners also, I think that they're practicing on the periphery, whilst I would like them to be actually at the center. Remember that in order to make an impact in life, you've got to dance in the center. You can't continue to dance on the periphery. So we need to find a way to bring them into the center. That is the struggle that I think we have not yet achieved, but it's something that we need to do. Hence, you must have heard that government is now trying to intervene by introducing an act. It is still at this stage a bill, the legal practice bill, where it even tried to fuse the two professions, the advocate's profession, the attorney's profession, something which actually then destabilizes then our profession. But because the government somehow feels frustrated that there isn't much progress which is done by this profession, which is self-regulatory, and so the best thing is for us to intervene. And when they intervene, you find that certain wrong things happen. And that is the struggle that at the moment we're dealing with as an advocate's profession, whether the government should actually then try and
in your opinion, what is the solution?
The solution,
if you can fast track that for me.
The solution for me is to make sure that the legal profession, that is the advocates, the attorneys, and business I'm talking of the private sector, work together to make sure that they start to have a mindset change, to understand that if you have an advocate who has studied law at university, it doesn't matter whether he's black or white, but he has the education. In order for him or her to become an expert in that area, you've got to start then making some introduction to him about the work that you have. So if you don't, then you're not going to develop the expertise that you have, and you're going to continue to have that divide. So we just have to make sure that we have that partnership is quite necessary and essential, and I don't think that partnership is taking place.
Herman, what are you seeing as CEO of the forensic unit? Who are you hiring into your teams?
We have the same challenge that William referred to, and I fully agree with the comments that he's made. We are unfortunate that we have now reached the stage where, in my team, we are 42% are are previously disadvantaged people, if I may use that term. But we have that same challenge, and every environment have that challenge because of where we come from. And every business must do what William is saying, and that's take some extraordinary steps. One of the things that I'm quite proud of is that we have now introduced what's called an internship, where we bring in people almost like at the bar, where you learn to become an advocate or learn to become a CA. And we particularly go out of our way to go and fetch people from University of Turfloop, that used to of North, what it was called, and from the Transkei. You've got to do those extraordinary things to bring these people who for no other reason, purely if it's not money or location, probably would have gone to one of the top universities in Johannesburg. If you don't do that in a business like KPMG, you become simply irrelevant because of the real world around you, and you need to build things for it. So we need to work much harder on that, and I'm sure William meant to say what I want to say, and it's an attitude thing. And he made a point which is a very powerful point, and that is the law. When I was a youngster, there was a guy here, Klaus von Lierus, who was one of the boss men. One of the things he taught me was, he said, the day you become a lawyer, you're out of the sprint race. Lawyers don't sprint. We are marathon people. That's why you're going to be a judge when you're 73.
We're keeping...
That's a good point.
On the marathon note, we're keeping the discussion real, and just looking at our Twitter feed, controversial topics, the legal practice bill, transformation and separation of powers, views of the experts. Wim.
Well, on the transformation score, there are very many challenges, and I share William's views about them. And I don't know what the solution is. One of the things we've tried is that a friend of ours, Vincent Maleka, and I recently formed a new group, because the structure at the bar until now has largely been that there are white groups with a few black people and black groups with a few white people. We have now formed a new group which is more or less evenly split, perhaps a little bit of a majority of black people, to try and create a non-racial culture which would make everybody feel welcome, rather than to have to adapt to some other tradition. So far it's working very well, and we hope it will encourage more people to come to the bar, more black people to come to the bar.
Herman, William, Emma and Wim, thank you so much for your time. You've been watching Captains of Industry, coming to you from the